Israeli military now confirms the death of the late Hezbollah leader's likely successor. Take a look at your screen. Hassan Nasrallah's cousin, Hashim Safadine, was the head of the terror group's executive council. The Israel Defense Force is now confirming his death in a strike earlier this month at Hezbollah's main intelligence headquarters. That is in a suburb of Beirut. The strike came days after Israel eliminated Nasrallah, the group's longtime leader and one of its founding members. And of course, just a couple weeks later, the Israeli military killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. While some names have been thrown around, it is not clear who will take over for Sinwar, leading that terror group right now. Again, a lot of questions here, a lot to discuss, so I do want to bring in a good friend of the show here, Dr. Asaf Romirowsky, the Executive Director of Scholars for Peace in the Middle East. Thank you so much for taking the time, as always, to be here with us.
Thank you as always for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, first off, I do want to talk about the death of Hezbollah's likely new leader, who is now obviously not going to be the leader. Does this send a strong message to Hezbollah that not only have they taken out Nasrallah, but also the next in line?
Well, it does. I mean, Safadine was indeed Nasrallah's cousin. It's important to understand that within Islamist organization, there is a hierarchy, there is a council, and he was part of that council. And so he, of course, was the next in line to succeed Nasrallah. The fact that the Israelis have that good actionable intelligence as regarding the successors and their whereabouts and whatnot is definitely clear and definitely something that has instilled a fear in the organization itself, as far as the organization's ability to successfully go on forward. I mean, it's important to note also that Nasrallah, of course, led the organization for the past 32 years. He was the mastermind figure that led the organization with an iron fist. And so ideologically speaking, large shoes to fill all around. That being said, it is amazing to see the level of intelligence and the level of actionable intelligence that the Israelis have been able to obtain and infiltrate the organization as they moved on now from defensive to offensive, with the clear goal of de-Hezbollahifying Lebanon. I mean, I think that it's been Lebanon. You know, this has been a war in contrast of the war in the south that Israel has been preparing for. Historically speaking, Israel has fought 2 wars with Lebanon. Hezbollah has been edging closer and closer into and encroaching on Israeli society, on the north in Israel. As you know, there has been close to 70,000+ citizens who have been displaced. Rockets have been coming in, and they've long overdue broken the 1701 UN resolution, and so they need to push Hezbollah back. So any way to create this array is what the Israelis want to do and are doing. Leadership-wise, this is where they're able to do this well. It's unclear yet who will take over. What is clear is that one way or another, Iran is still calling the shots.
And we did learn that a drone was actually spotted flying over Israeli airspace for about an hour late Tuesday night. So I want to talk a little bit about security here. Is that concerning for Israel's defensive capabilities overall?
100%. I mean, not only was there a drone, there was actually an attempted attack on Benjamin Netanyahu's house in Caesarea. A drone actually hit that house. He and his wife were not in the house, but windows were broken as far as what was shown. Again, in contrast to Hamas, when Hamas started this war a year ago, they had about 30,000 rockets. Hezbollah, in contrast, has over 200,000. Not to mention there is concern, and we know that they have also potentially biological and chemical weapons. They have guidance system missiles where they can actually target central parts of Israel, as they've been doing. So the threat is still alive and real, and still continues, which is exactly to your earlier point, why Israel is continuing the fight in Hezbollah, why they need to continue the fight. The war with Hezbollah and the war with the North in general is long from, is not even close to being over. And so this is exactly where they need to be concerned about understanding the real threats that are here. There is no doubt that because they are taking their marching orders from Iran, that the Iranians are looking to have their proxies, Hezbollah and Hamas, respectfully act the way they've been acting, not to mention the fact that you see the tandem operations happening here. After the assassination of Sinwar, you saw Hezbollah reacting to that by firing more rockets at Israel. So again, the goal is to attack Israel from these perspectives, and you can see how that the tandem reactions shows the connectivity that they have, all coming directly out of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
And I do want to pop up this live image over Beirut in Lebanon. You can see just some of the smoke, the debris there that is still rising. And I did want to ask you about kind of the intensification of the attacks on Hezbollah by the IDF there in Lebanon, because do you think that assassination attempt on Netanyahu played any role in the intensification of those attacks? I mean, there's no question that Hezbollah has been attacking northern Israel here for months upon months, but now we're seeing more and more happening in the Beirut area. So is that connected to that assassination attempt?
I have no doubt that it is. I mean, there's clearly some kind of desire for some kind of tit for tat. When Israel took out the top brass of their leadership, the fact that they're targeting openly, and I mean, again, all Israeli leaders are targeted, but the fact they're openly targeting the prime minister to actually show, that they see him as the figurehead responsible for the war itself. That is for sure has to do symbolically with the intensification. That being said, Hezbollah has been a stronghold within Lebanon for a very long time. They've taken over the parliament. They basically run the show. And so Hezbollah has a very weak leadership. I mean, the voices coming out of the White House with the attempt to try to salvage and save Hezbollah, save Lebanon, and try to make these moves happen, that's going to take a very long time. I mean, Hezbollah has been so ingrained within Lebanese society, not to mention the fact that Syria has been, where Hezbollah has also been operating, using Lebanon and its playground. Like I said, a total and utter disentanglement, to say the least, of Hezbollah from the area is required. This is an untenable situation for the Israelis, and they need to really deal with this real threat. This is also the other major difference. Hezbollah indeed represents a existential strategic threat to the state of Israel. Hamas may have been a tactical issue. This is a real threat. I mean, again, and they're all real threats, but I'm saying the extent of this threat goes much further beyond, given the fact that, of course, Lebanon is a state. It's a very different terrain as far as dealing with Hamas, and that's why they've been there for so long, and they have been harboring terrorism for all these years. So the fact that they're going into Beirut is very telling. Historically speaking, I mean, look, the war from 82 to 2000 lasted for years, and there was a war in 2006. Israelis remember Lebanon very well, and they're taking a huge amount of toll on Israeli lives. They're not looking to have a long war, but no wars are short, as we're seeing what's happening now, and the threats are still alive and well.
Let's talk a little bit about Hamas and, of course, the death of Yahya Sinwar, the leader there of Hamas, killed by the IDF just last week at this point. So Blinken, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, was over in Israel yesterday. He did speak, met for 2.5 hours with Netanyahu, and apparently told him that they should use Sinwar's death to essentially have a time of peace and to work together to make this ceasefire hostage release deal a reality. Is that a reality that would happen right now? I imagine the war is still going to continue because at this point, Hamas still exists, and one of the war goals is to get rid of them, to eliminate them as much as possible.
Well, true. So here's really the issue. I mean, it's been very clear that Sinwar held all the cards. Sinwar had no incentive to have a deal. He never wanted a deal. This was a part of his lifeline, as we know today, and we've spoken for a great, for a while now. We know today that the 6 murdered hostages from Hirsch Palin and others about almost 2 months ago now. They were the ones that Sinwar surrounded himself by. We have DNA evidence of that at this point. So a lot of this has to do, Sinwar was holding a lot of the cards. It's not clear what kind of marching orders he gave his brother, the assumed successor of the organization itself. What is currently happening, and this is exactly, there is a hope or I know pressure that Sinwar's body is being held as collateral in a way that maybe that can move along some kind of pressure regarding the hostage deal. The hope is that Hamas is in enough disarray that the Israelis can put money on the table or any kind of deal on the table that the existing leadership, because Hamas has basically been close to 90% devastated inside of the South, they would, if they were given safe passage, would they allow the hostage deal to move along? That being said, Hamas at large, which is also part of the concern, has no incentive. I mean, they would be more than happy to hold on as much as possible as far as the legacy of Sinwar and to, show that they have defeated the evil Israelis by holding on to the hostages, playing this psychological warfare that's hurting all around Israeli society. And they know that. That is their only winning card. As far as that goes, and how they're going to use that is really the concern that the Israelis are having, which is why the pressure for time-wise to make a deal now as a result of the disarray is coming at this point in time. But it's really hard to speculate. And the other part, which is also a concern as well, is who are the interlocutors strong enough to deal with the existing leadership to move this along? Really, the strong major leader that does exist is Khaled Mashal, who is living, like a king and has a safe haven in Qatar. And so really, if the United States wants to put pressure, it would be pressure on the Qataris to put Mashal on TV, say, we have lost. We're going to release the hostages, and the war could be over. It's very hard to see that happening, but that's exactly the kind of pressure that needs to happen, given the fact that Mashal, who was the head of the Hamas Politburo and is one of the more senior left alive leaders after Hania was killed and after Sinwar was killed, that he would be the one to make that kind of overture. But that pressure is yet to come on the Qataris in a strong enough way, which I would like to see. But thus far, not to mention the fact that we are about 2 weeks before the election, Blinken is making his last hurrah, an attempt kind of to go back to the region and see what else he can do before the elections are happening here.
My last question for you here before I let you go. I want to talk a little bit about the leak of those classified documents that pertain to Israel's retaliatory attack on Iran. Do we know overall the extent of what was included in those classified documents and whether that will have any sort of effect on the retaliatory attack by Israel on Iran?
We don't know for a fact, but we don't know that, there is something seriously rotten in the administration when you have these kind of leaks coming out. This also speaks to why the Israelis have been very, very careful about sharing their action plans with the United States, even though they've been criticized for not sharing enough when they've been taking out these top brass leaders in Hamas and in Hezbollah. But the fact that we have a leak in-house only shows Iranian influence inside of the White House by individuals who've had active ties to Iran. We know about, a few years ago, there was a situation with Robert Malley. There's also a situation now with the Iranian interlocutor Anatabi, who was in charge of the Iranian desk. I mean, these are serious concerns. And this is a breach of their jobs. This is the breach of their their clearances that are taking place here within the American government. This really speaks to a larger problem that needs to be vetted now. There is no doubt that we've seen over the past few decades now attempts by the regime to ingratiate itself and get itself into American institutions. We see it in the academy as far as Iranian studies. We see it now in government. These are indeed serious problems, and I'm not surprised, as a result of all of that, that the Israelis are keeping everything under cloak and dagger, because otherwise they will lose the element of surprise. And there's obviously a serious concern about that, given the latest reports that are coming out.
All right, Dr. Asaf Romirowsky, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and break down all of the developments. Anything else you want to add about any of this before I let you go?
No, there's obviously things are always changing on a daily and hourly basis, but I appreciate the time as always.
All right, thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.